Another airline. Airline heavy today. I'm going to read it first, sorry.
Okay.
The Southwest, not the whole book, the Southwest Airlines Way, Jody Hoffer Gattell. When was this written, please?
Let's find out. It was released in 2002.
Okay, so we're in the airline era, airline book era. Do you know anything of Southwest Airlines Way?
Guessing they're based in the southwest of the US.
Yes, I think they're all over now, actually. Domestic airline, and they're a very often referenced company because they're a brilliant company that have been doing very, very well for a very long time. So that you'll often see on LinkedIn, someone go, "Oh, this is what Southwest Airlines do." They're very, very good company.
Fortune magazine suggests they're the most successful airline in history.
Yeah. And what's always interesting about Southwest Airlines, as compared to some of the other airlines we're talking about, is they have been the balance of ambitious yet modest. They're always excellent performers financially speaking, but they're never like flying too close to the sun. And again, I always like to make a financial argument. There will have been many opportunities for Southwest Airlines over the years where they could have flown close to the sun, i.e. expanded, diversified, done something that's really stretched them, that could have potentially reaped short-term rewards. But one of the things that we'll speak about in this book is part of their philosophy, this is their phraseology, is controlled growth. They have this long-term infinite perspective, and growth is an important subject within that. You have to grow at the right pace. Otherwise, going back to our previous episode, you become singing I Will Always Love You and you lose control of the song. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that a good analogy? Because I think I'm going to use it more often, so I want to know if you like it.
I've already tweeted that after you talked about it.
All right.
And I'm going to use it most days.
I've already copyrighted it, so... And so controlled growth, part of their... So they've always been very, year on year, quarter on quarter, a very high performing organization, but they've never been like Tesla, like stocks through the roof and all that. However, make the financial argument, even if they would have done a number of things in their time that would have made them lots of money in a short space of time, it wouldn't equal more money than what they've been able to do over when were they founded, please?
1966.
1966. How long's that? 40, 60, 58 years? Long time. Average lifespan of a company, under 20 years.
Is it?
Yeah. 58 years they've been going for. They could have made more money, had higher peaks, but they know about the long term. They understand that it's an infinite game they're in this world of business. So they've done that over the years. Now, again, they could have done a number of things to make their annual statements look better, but it wouldn't have equaled more money than consistency over 58 years. You can make a financial argument. If you have a greedy founder or shareholders that want to get their 9th yacht, then maybe they push you to try and make the short term quick, but you risk the business. You risk the business if you don't. It doesn't equal more money over the long course. And they've always been that way inclined. Here's a nice example of the Southwest Airlines way. 9/11, of course, absolutely devastating for US airlines. They were the only company that didn't lay anyone, only airline that didn't lay anyone off after 9/11.
Wow.
The reason they did that is because they have a culture of really genuinely looking after their people. And it's not just something they say, it's something they do. And an example of a mechanism they have in place, and if you could bring this image up, please, Dylan, on the screen, that would be lovely. Here's a mechanism that they put in place to make sure that actually happens. Here are the cash reserves of different airlines in the US prior to going into prior to 9/11 happening. So 90 days, so 3 months worth of cash reserves, as compared to, you look at United Airlines, American Airlines, where they have 20 days. This enabled them to not have to lay off their employees, and you just imagine the knock-on impact that has. Imagine how it feels working for that company versus working for United Airlines, American Airlines, whoever it might be. And this is what an amazing, again, mechanism, thing to have in place to make this thing that they say they care about, which is looking after employees, actually happen, versus, I'm sure all those other companies say the same thing. It's a financial instrument they put in place by the way of cash reserves to make sure if something like this happens, which you have to know in an airline, you always are at risk. It's a risk to the business, hopefully one that doesn't come around in too many generations. But it's always a risk, and they know that. So they calculated it, and they had the cash reserves to make sure that this happens. They're a super interesting company. I learned a lot from this, from Southwest Airlines, as many people have, and it was always really interesting. I've said to you before, there are a number of things that I thought I discovered. I thought from my own working in companies and just sort of I thought, I figured this out, and then you read a book like this, written when I was very young, when they're talking about all the principles that I thought I discovered. You think, okay, these have been knocking around for a long time. Here's a little example of this. So I'm gonna read you a little quote here. Problem-solving communication, in turn, enables employees to adapt quickly and work together when things go wrong. It is a critical ingredient in coordinating flight departures. As we saw, however, when something went wrong at American Airlines, the primary focus of communication was blaming and the avoidance of blame. In contrast, when something went wrong at Southwest Airlines, the primary focus of communication was problem solving. A very simple thing they're talking about there. So you've studied American Airlines, they've studied Southwest Airlines. Is a behavioural difference in a large group of people, problem solving versus trying to blame each other. Now, there's this principle I talk about. I'm going to use some ancient Greek language here because it makes me feel very, very sophisticated. Philia, 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 which means in ancient Greek translates to the love of. And there's something implicit in the word that means a deep love of, a profoundly deep love of, like you love this thing more than anything. And then there are two other words to say. So the first one is Nikia, so Nikia. Nike, goddess of victory. Why Nike is called Nike, victory.
Yeah.
So when you put those two words together, you have Philia Nikia, which means the love of victory or the love of winning. Last word, Sophia, which translates to wisdom. It's the ancient Greek for wisdom. So you put Philia Nikia together and you have the love of victory. You put Philia Sophia together, philosophy. That's where the word philosophy comes from. And it translates to the love of wisdom. Now, this concept you can put up against each other. You can have Philia Nikia and Philia Sophia. You put them up against each other in the realm of discourse. Okay, so this is like a philosophical principle that you can talk about within the realms of discourse, exchanges between people or between groups of people. So Philia Nikia means, and again, in this word Philia, there's something implicit in the word that means you love it above other things. So you have a group of people that are either Philia Nikia or Philia Sophia. What Philia Nikia means is what Southwest Airlines are talking about here. The people within an exchange are motivated by playing the game of victory they're trying to win. They want the thing that they say to be the best thing, for them to seem the smartest, the most intelligent, whatever their aim might be. And also, because you're talking about the game of victory, there are two sides to it, and we can use a little bit of a sporting psychology here. So there are two concepts within, it's called motivation theory within sports psychology. There's one side of it that's called need to achieve, which is when people are motivated by achieving something. I'll give you a football analogy. If there's a penalty, let's take Harry Kane, the team wins a penalty, he wants to take the penalty because he wants to win his team the game.
Yep.
That's need to achieve. The other side of that is need to avoid failure. You're in the same realm. You're talking about the game of victory, winning and losing, but it's a different motivation. Your team gets a penalty. You don't want to take the penalty because you don't want to miss and lose your team the game. Within sports psychology, you can attribute need to achieve as being more a more potent, useful motivation to have. Need to achieve. You want to be the person that grabs the ball, puts the ball on the spot, and wants to score the goal. Now, the reason to use that is when you're talking in the realm of Philia Nikia, and therefore you've got a room of people who are playing the game of victory, that splits into two. You have people in the room who want to say the best thing because they want to win, their need to achieve. They want to seem the smartest, improve their position or stabilize their position within the social hierarchy. You then have the other people in the room that don't want to lose. How that manifests is they keep stum. There's a debate going on. There are the people that are the need to achievers. They're saying the things, they're criticizing the ideas, they're saying the smartest things. And you have the need to avoid failures who just keep quiet because they don't want to lose. They're still playing the game of victory. You're in the realm of victory. You're in the realm of winning or losing. It's just a different manifestation of it. So that's Philia Nikia, and this is what they're talking about here. When something goes wrong, as it was shown in this study and presented in Southwest Airlines Way book, they're playing the blame game. They're trying to avoid game and place blame, winning or losing. Philia Sophia, when we talk about Philia Sophia, the love of wisdom in discourse, what that means is everybody in that room is aiming towards something higher, something more important than themselves and them winning whatever that means in exchange. They're in search of something as a group, as a collective. How that actually looks, and this is always the first thing that I look for when I start working with a mature client that has an executive team, I'll go and observe a meeting, and this is the first thing I'm looking for. Firstly, do they engage in lively ideological conflict, because ideological conflict is not interpersonal conflict where they're trying to win. It's discussing an idea or a principle in order to achieve wisdom, in order to form a better idea, in order to further their growth, their learning, their understanding, their knowledge of something. That's Philia Sophia. And that's what I look for. I'm always interested to see, are these people in this room motivated towards themselves and therefore it's a Philia Nikia room, or do they not care about that? Are they able to put their egos aside, their own personal motivations aside, and come together for the good of the collective? It's really hard to achieve. And one integral part of being able to achieve it that you have to have is an infinite cause. You have to have something that group of people they're genuinely motivated by and driven towards. They care about achieving this thing. And therefore, this discussion that we're having and all of these discussions we're having, what we're trying to do through what usually manifests as lively, healthy debate is we're just trying to get the best idea. There's a lovely quote about Steve Jobs when it was in his biography, and a member of Apple said they once watched Steve Jobs in a meeting, and he was vigorous in the way that he communicated, and he was vigorously arguing against an idea that someone in the room had. And that person argued back so well and so strongly that Steve Jobs changed his mind, and he changed his mind so thoroughly that he adopted the idea as if it was his. And what people have ascribed to that way of working and personality trait that Steve Jobs had is he genuinely didn't care about who had the idea. He didn't care. It wasn't about winning or losing. He was just trying to find the best idea, i.e. he's fostering, hopefully, an environment of Philia Sophia. People are just trying to learn. They're trying to improve. They're trying to attain wisdom. And so this was... This is something that I, talked to clients about for years and thought, oh, this is this is something that hasn't been applied. And then you go, oh no, people have been saying it just in different ways. And it's one of these things that it's an elusive thing to try and put into data. Like, is this company Philia Sophia, Philia Nikia? What I can say is, if you think about the impacts of, let's take a senior team within an organization being Philia Nikia or being Philia Sophia, I would assert this. One of those two, whichever you are on that camp, will dictate whether you're a bad business that will fail or a great business that will do well over the long term.
I'll challenge you a bit with that, and only because I know loads of businesses who are Philia Nikia and they're doing pretty well and have been doing pretty well for a number of years. And when I say that, I mean like the customer service, and it's all about like trying to blame and say it's you. So when I picked this book up and I had a little look at it, the thing that jumped out to me was the line that says, use conflicts to build relationships. And I was like, that's a bit of me, that's exactly what I would do. And then I thought, I've got a supplier who is completely Philia Nikia. It's, you go to them with a challenge and you tell them all the reasons why it wasn't their fault and how it's something that you need to do and you didn't do this and you do that. And they're a pretty big business. So they've done it. And I know that some of the mobile phone networks, I won't mention which one, whenever we've had customer service conversations with them, they would be like that in their conversations you have with customer service agents. Yeah. They would, it's not our fault, it's your fault, you've got to do this.
I agree completely. Here's what I would say back to you. You and I are both very young. We're both in our early 20s.
Always liked you.
And it's not a long time. It feels like a long time because it's our life. For as long as we've been adults and you see businesses and you say, okay, I'm 31 now. So let's say from the age of 18, 13 years. For me, that feels like a long time because it's my life. It's not a long time. That's not a particularly long time. I'm always going to name and shame this company because I've done it on a previous podcast. Let's take the example of Vodafone.
I never mentioned Vodafone, by the way.
I know. I'm mentioning Vodafone. Okay. Yeah. We're in an interesting industry to be slating. I'm mentioning Vodafone. I think they're, from a customer experience perspective, from me being a customer, nothing more than that, I think they're a terrible company and I hate them. Now, they've done well and are still doing well and have been for how many years? I don't know, 20 years, something like that? Longer?
Well, Vodafone actually made the first mobile call in the UK in 1989.
89, so that's 30 years near, whatever we're talking about. And they will have lots of very positive things, and like every organization's flawed, and you're always on a spectrum of how good are the good things and how many bad things have you got, and trying to edge your way up there. Here's what I would say: is yes, there are. Let's say that Vodafone are a Philia Nikia company, which is unfair to say because it's not one or the other, it's not binary. But let's say they are. Yes, they might be successful. And yes, they might be successful if they're in an industry and if they have the market share. Their sandcastle might be more robust, that it takes the wind longer to knock it over. However, if you broaden the time scale, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens when the technology changes again, like happened with the banks and mobile phones and apps, and then Tide and Starling and Monzo and all of these things really challenge the high street bank. Let's see what happens. Let's see if they're a good enough of an organization, they have a healthy enough of an ecosystem with a philosophy in place that they're executing, that they don't get knocked over. If you look back at the S&P 500 30 years ago, which is the equivalent of us going on now and looking at Meta and Google, Alphabet, all of these big companies, the names are all different on that list. There are many companies that have been the most successful. General Electric, always a good example, the most successful companies in the world, and they either don't exist or are like a shadow of them of their former selves. It depends on your timescales. You can be successful, particularly if you find an industry where you can glide down for long enough because you're big enough. You can be successful, but it depends if you care about the next generation, the generation after that. Let's see what happens. We might not be around. Maybe we're talking about an industry and an organization in Vodafone, for example, with a diverse enough business and enough of a foothold in the way our society works that they will be successful for long enough. Listen, Nokia, they dominated the phone market. And let me say one more thing on that, if you don't mind. Do you mind if I say one more thing on that?
Feels dead awkward if I mind now, so I'm going to say no.
Nokia, there's a study, an academic study done on Nokia that actually I'm going to maybe put a link somewhere. I'll send it to you. Remind me to do that, Dylan. And basically what went wrong at Nokia is this. The senior teams, they stopped being able to talk to each other. They were just trying to win their own. And when you then talk about this person and this person at this person at a senior level trying to win, you have fragmentation of departments, et cetera, and the ripples are infinite. This is what I'm talking about of if you have Philia Nikia at the highest level, I can't guarantee it, but I can near enough guarantee it. You're at minimum going to have problems. My experience and the most likely thing is you're on the decline. You're going to hit problems. I'm so sorry for interrupting.
No, it's fine. Don't worry. I was just saying when you mentioned Nokia about thinking about what their challenge around, did they not have an infinite cause, for instance? Because famously, they didn't believe not having keys on a phone was part of the challenge. They were like, no, that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. Like that was one of the things. No, that's not going to work. You've got to have the keys.
Their infinite cause was to connect people, which is a very reasonable infinite cause.
Okay.
So it's a perfect reason one. Didn't execute it.
So it's execution there.
They said it, they didn't do it.
Fair play.
One of their values was renewal, which is ironic. It's what they didn't do. They didn't execute. Again, it's all well and good saying this stuff. You have to do it. You have to be a Southwest Airlines way, and you care about your employees over the long term. And there, you actually do something about it, and you put 90 days worth of cash in the bank and a million other things. That's the difference.
The other thing about this book, which I looked at from briefly in the conversation that we're having, was the controlled growth, like the whole slow and steady wins the race, the hare and the tortoise and all that kind of stuff. And the amount of times I've heard of bad culture problems in startup businesses, and then at the same time I'm hearing about high growth and becoming a unicorn and the desire and chase for that getting big fast. If you look at any support that you get locally in businesses, all of the agencies, all of the local government things are looking for high growth businesses to be able to use. And I was wondering if the problem with the societal view on business today about it achieving high growth is actually something that feeds that bad culture, because like they are so transfixed on growing the revenue as fast as possible that they think they forget about everything else.
Let me be really balanced here.
Okay.
I think that in many situations, a the best way for an organization to get closer to achieving your cause is, for example, to employ a tactic like grab market share. I think that is a legitimate thing that sometimes, I don't know, you go back to the early days of McDonald's and Burger King. Why, among many reasons, but one of the main reasons that McDonald's is McDonald's and Burger King is Burger King is because they grabbed market share in Asia where Burger King didn't, and it's made them phenomenally more successful than Burger King. Yep. So I absolutely don't dispute that they are legitimate tactics if done in the right way that are legitimate and are the ones that should be explored. However, it just is, think about it. You've got 10 people and you've developed a really healthy culture, whether it's like let's say it's efficiency. That's a sort of a founding part of the culture, that the group just communicates really efficiently well together. And then you add 500 people into that group. Whoa, it's just hard to control. It's just a natural thing. It's just harder to control it. So it's always a difficult subject. And again, I can't give a number. I can't say, add this number of people year on year, because it differs. But it's something you have to be deliberate in. That's all I would say. Be deliberate on it, because again, even if the startup unicorny world, that one of my good friends has been bouncing around these type of companies for many years, AI technology, he was the first chap that showed me ChatGPT and some of this sort of like face recognition stuff. So really promising companies, and you see the failure rate on them. And I'm always, when we go for dinner, I'm always probing him, like, what's going on? And you see some of the operation of the organization. You just think they're trying to build a product. They're not trying to build an organization. And then that happens. They have this, everyone's excited about it, then it just flops and crumbles because it doesn't work properly. The machine beneath it isn't working properly. It's just an idea that hasn't been executed well enough. So it's definitely the first director. Another nice example. Great customer service. I call them now, and 10 seconds later, hello, Mr. Gilbert, how may I help you? Oh, lovely. How nice is that in this day and age? There would be many opportunities for First Direct to majorly expand over the years, loads of opportunities, but they know that their offering, which is around customer service, and the way that they execute that is not in a wholesale, like an Amazon way, where it's like the seamlessness. It's about personal service. That when you've got that, it's harder to grow. So they've always been conscious of it. Don't grow too quickly because you lose control and you start to be trying to hit those high notes and screech in your voice, and the whole song goes a bit wrong. And it's hard to get it back when you've done that. Hard to get back in control. So it's a very difficult subject. There's no metric I can give. It differs from business to business in the model, but you have to be deliberate. You don't be greedy.
Have you ever? I always ask you about, have you ever done stuff at work, because I'm interested in what you do. But have you ever not worked with someone or decided not to work with someone because you thought their plans for growth were a bit much?
Yeah,
okay.
Many times. The thing behind it, though, is the motivation of the people making the decision, so the leaders of the business, are money. They want to make money as quickly as they can. When you start getting to that territory, I can't help. I can't help that much. I can maybe give you a couple of pointers on, these are ways of, to run the business that will make it work better. But at the highest level, which is where you have to start from, I can't help that much, because you don't have aspirations of building a long-term successful organization. And listen, for me personally, the thing that gives me the feeling up the back of the neck and goosebumps is this subject of trying to build companies that people, let's expand this timeline now because of hopefully where lifespan is going. You're 150 years old looking back at your life, and you're really deeply proud of what you did for work. That's what I'm always trying to build companies that people feel that way about it in retrospect. So when you got a company that, they're just trying to make money as quickly as they can, I'm not interested. That's how I feel about it. I can give a couple of pointers, but I don't want to. So if anyone's listening, let's not talk. You crack on. Good luck. And by the way, again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with trying to make money and, wanting to get a business to a stage where you sell it. I've worked with many companies like that. But when all you care about is money and you'll use it whatever method you can to get there, it's not what this subject is about. It's about building infinite-minded organizations that are wildly successful over long periods of time.
And conversely, then, have you struggled with people who maybe care too much about that vision thing and aren't as focused on actually the making money bit?
Yeah, definitely. What happens because of the subject that I deal in is you do have a spectrum of the type of people, therefore businesses that I start to communicate with. There are some that I find this with startups in particular. There are certainly not all of them, but there are a small minority of them that they're so driven by, I suppose, the more like nurturing, caring element of running a business. And they want to look after their people so well from the get-go because of their experience or whatever it might have been, that they lack a bit of the balance of the drive and the push and the ambition and the excellence and the strive towards making stuff happen. I've experienced that many times before, and you have to have the balance of the two. Going back to the thing that I care about of building companies that people will be deeply proud to have been part of. Yeah, great, looking after your people and whatever that actually means. That can mean a million different things, but if you don't match that with achievement and being a successful company, people won't feel deeply proud of it. They'll think, oh, that was a nice company to work for. They won't feel like, oh, we did something important there. So you have to balance the two things. It's the minority of cases. But yeah, I've experienced it before where there's a tendency towards the nurture and the care, and there's a little bit of a lack of oomph and push to get things done, which is a nice place to start, but you have to correct it. You have to correct that course. Otherwise, you'll be a nice little company that, is very possible not going to be successful.
And bringing that back to the book again, then, Southwest have got that right, haven't they? Because on that graphic that you showed before, at some point they had that many months runway, excuse the pun. They had that much money in the bank that they had obviously considered the money as much as they considered the infinite cause, I guess.
For sure. And I think something that Southwest Airlines have always been conscious of is, they don't use these words, but is the subject of entropy. They know and articulate very strongly that they know that because they've been successful and what they've done has worked doesn't mean it will continue to work. They call it the competency trap. So a false belief that your past principles, idea, and mental models will continually lead to future successes and better judgment. What a wise musing there. It's the same thing as talking about entropy, infinite-mindedness, Jeff Bezos, it's still day one, sandcastles to sand piles, or what we discussed last week, the growth mindset. You never feel like I've arrived, we're here, we've done it. Because you're in an infinite game. It doesn't stop. No one blows the whistle and says you've won. It doesn't happen in business. It's an infinite game by its nature. So if you want to, again, be successful over the long term, and I would argue even in the short term, it's a better course to go down. You have to be infinite minded. Therefore, you have to go like, listen, the way we've done it to this point has served us really well, and the principles behind it we want to keep aiming towards, but we'll find ways to do it better. We'll find ways to improve it. We'll find the way to look after our people. We'll find new ways of doing it that improve upon the way that we've done it before. And all of the competencies and principles that Southwest Airlines aim towards. So that's another thing that I think is a very key attribute of their philosophy, that the leaders know that. They know that this is an infinite game, and therefore they play it infinitely.